Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices is made possible in part by Allstate and the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust.
Good evening y bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices. I'm Alex Hernandez of Univision Chicago Primera Hora, which airs every weekday morning at 5 and 6. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us on the show tonight. This time of year can bring cheer for some, but many struggle to find holiday spirit. We talk to local mental health professionals about coping with depression and anxiety during the holiday season. Celebrating the Cuban comet, Minnie Miñoso, who became a Hall of Famer this week. Advice for Latino college grads as they start building professional careers. A group of local environmentalists offer la última palabra on how diversity can bring about a natural change in the conservation field.
Businesses can survive in neighborhoods like this. They can be competitive, they can get a following.
And a South Chicago bakery is firing up its oven again after a 27-year hiatus. First off tonight, this season is a joyous time for many, but for others, the holidays can bring feelings of sadness, isolation, and anxiety. And with COVID-19 casting a long shadow among Latinos, finding that holiday spirit can be especially difficult. A 2020 survey by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that 18% of Latino respondents reported having seriously considered suicide in the previous 30 days. And according to National Alliance on Mental Illness Statistics, while Latinos are as vulnerable to mental illness as any other demographic, only 34% of Latino adults with mental illness receive treatment, compared to the U.S. average of 45%. Joining us now to talk about how to spot signs of depression and how to get help are Ernestina Perez, licensed clinical therapist and founder of Latinx Talk Therapy, and Francis Ferrer, director for mental health and with Rincon Family Services. I want to thank both of you for joining us today. And I want to start with you, Ernestina. We tend to think of the holidays as a happy time, but it can also be a very stressful one, especially in the Latino community. Why is that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think with the Latino community, the values instilled are family, not just your mom, dad, but it's extended family. You got your cousins, los primos, la madrina, everyone coming together. And there is an expectation that you're going to follow maybe certain moral or religious practices, mainly here, perhaps Catholicism, and celebrate time together. However, when we are interacting with family, there's always going to be things that are going to come up for us, especially if they haven't been processed before or talked about and healed.
Francis, going with you, many of our families have big holiday gatherings, obviously. How can that affect also mental health?
Well, it would affect mental health because we have to remember that not everyone has a family. And it's a moment that, like Ernestina said, it's a moment definition for Christmas for the Latino is family gathering, reunion, values. So this is they're coming to this country, especially here in United States. So it's a different culture. So they're between two cultures. And then at the same time, so probably, isolation, learning how to live in these cultures too. So for the Latino, they're more in, they're not easy for them to build relationships out of their, surroundings, like family, like, friends. So it's like a beginning for them in a new life here. But at the same time, the depression comes when sometimes they live by themselves. They don't have no one to contact. Now with the pandemic,
right.
So they isolate more.
Yeah, so everything plays a role pretty much in the holidays. Ernestina, going back with you, what factors might prevent Latinos from seeking out mental health care?
Well, there's a lot of stigma in the community about what mental health is. There's a lot of, estoy loca, I don't need services. And I really think there's just not generationally experiences where people have sought out treatment or have even had, the opportunity to learn the words, to express themselves emotionally, let alone the skills that it takes to manage and treat mental health issues such as depression, such as having shame, anxiety. So one really has to understand what those are and what triggers are, so that if you are having a gathering with your family for Navidad or for New Year's or whatever it is that you're celebrating, that you really are able to be self-aware as to what's coming up for you, and also maybe what is coming up within the family, because there is such a strong family value. So sometimes there's issues that have been around for a long time that haven't been talked about, and that can be experienced as a grief, as a disconnection between family members, emotional cutoffs, history of abuse, addictions, alcoholism. And if the community doesn't have the words to say, oh, you know what, like, this is a mental health issue, this is something we should come together as a family to talk about, and we should try to work through our vergüenza or shame, or maybe just come together to identify and create a space
Right.
to understand the importance of talking about it.
So once a mental problem has been identified, Francis, what resources are out there for Latinos looking for help?
So we have a couple non-for-profit agency that we provide services to the client, individual and family services. So I believe the thing is to let the Latino know what are the services are. Sometimes they suffer because they're not educated in that area how to seek for services. So I believe it's like, community-based, everyone to engage, to recognize. I think we should start working in educating the people that having this symptom is not to shame, and to recognize, when they need to help, and train people to recognize like mental health first aid, to recognize, when the person is going through a depression, so they can help them.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, recognizing those signs. That brings me
Yes.
back to you, Ernestina. What are the signs of depression to look out for in a loved one, in a gathering? What do we need to be looking out for?
I think if you're noticing that somebody feels a little bit isolated, they seem perhaps sad, or they've expressed they feel empty or down, tearful, maybe you can just experience them as disconnected. I think the first thing is to address it head on directly and talk to the person and just say, hey, how are you feeling? It seems like you're down. Is that right? Is there anything I could do to help you feel better? Or do you want to talk about it? I think just opening the dialogue. But of course, if somebody has identified that they do feel down and it's more than 2 weeks, with more days than not, feeling like worthlessness, hopelessness, depressed mood, feeling low, then I think that they should seek some professional help so that they can work and treat and manage those symptoms.
Definitely, such an important topic, obviously, and sometimes it's hard to detect when someone has really those depressions. So, Ernestina Perez, thank you so much, and also Francis Ferrer, thank you both of you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sox fans rejoice at this week's news that Mr. White Sox, Minnie Miñoso, has been granted a spot in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. The Cuban Comet broke the color line for the White Sox when he joined the team in 1951. He was selected for induction by the Golden Days Era Committee on Sunday, and University of Illinois professor Adrian Burgos Jr. says it's an honor that was long overdue.
The story of Minnie Miñoso is important not just to Chicago baseball fans, but it's a national story. Here you have a player who was the first Black Latino in Major League Baseball, but also it's the story of bringing us from the era of segregation into integration. He was the bridge. And he was not just the first, he was an all-star. He excelled. And it's that story, the story of persevering in the face of the language barrier, the cultural adjustment, and becoming a Chicago fan favorite, but also throughout the Caribbean. Orlando Cepeda called him our Jackie Robinson, and his election in the Hall of Fame reflects that meaningful place that he holds among Latinos, but also in baseball history.
We also talked to Minnie Miñoso's son, Charlie Rice Miñoso, on Chicago Tonight about the news this week. You can find that on our website. And as Latinos continue to make up an increasingly larger share of Americans, their numbers in higher education are also increasing. According to a study by Unidos US, there are 3.4 million Latinos enrolled in post-secondary institutions today, making up 20% of students across the country. The majority of them, 70%, are the first in their family to attend college, which means they don't always have access to mentors or role models in their community to usher them into professional careers. And with Latinos expected to make up 20% of the American workforce by 2024, getting young Latinos ready to work is more important than ever. Joining us with more today are Pedro Guerra, Director of Illinois Latino Small Business Partnership at the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Sasha Syed, founder of Career Design Lab. That's a learning and development company that teaches college students how to find a job. Thank you both of you for joining us today. I want to start with you, Pedro Guerra. Are there any particular industries young Latinos are more interested in or that you recommend exploring?
Yeah, I think right now one of the huge industries would be tech. One of the things that happened with the pandemic, it really exposed as far as what technology in all types of industries you're able to do. So technology definitely would be the industry.
And Sasha, what are the first things that you would tell college graduates to do when they're starting their career?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Number one, it would be to make a LinkedIn account. You know, LinkedIn is the #1 resource that employers are using to find talent. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account, make one today.
Okay, that's seems pretty simple. Everybody's using LinkedIn these days. Pedro, are there any cultural challenges Latino college grads might be surprised by when they start a professional career?
Yes, what I had to say, the structure of it, looking into the benefits for some of the employers where I know bereavement is one that gets tossed around a lot. As Latinos, we consider our tias and tios almost like mom and dads, our cousins like brothers and sisters, where in a corporate structure, bereavement would generally is, and a lot of businesses are changing their model. I know here at the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we've changed it where if aunt or uncle passes away, you're able to use your bereavement time. So just the culture challenges that a student might face would be internally as well.
Okay, and Sasha, how can these young graduates find job openings? Are there job boards that you recommend to them?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you could use, so the ones I would recommend, LinkedIn. You can go to something called JobServe, Career Builder, ZipRecruiter. But overall, what I would say is to not use job boards to actually apply to companies. The national response rate for job application tracking systems is only 3%. So even if students are applying directly to companies through a job site, they're probably not going to get a response back. So the best practice is to use job boards as a resource and knowing what jobs are opened, but then use that information and going straight to LinkedIn and reaching directly to.
So are companies not looking that much anymore to job boards, or why does it have such a low response rate?
Yeah, so I would say the reason why is because HR organizations, HR teams are just bombarded with jobs. To give you an example, I have a client today that has over 800 job openings for one site, and you know, HR can't at all take care of all those jobs that are coming out. So because it's just so overwhelming. So what they typically do is they use LinkedIn as a resource because they can typically find the better candidate on LinkedIn than on job boards because they're just inundated with resumes.
Totally makes sense. Pedro, what are good resources for Latinos looking to build a professional network?
Oh, that's a great question. Right off the back, I would have to say networking. Definitely plug into any one employee resources group with diversity and inclusion, networking events, but be strategical as far as when you're attending these networking events. Don't just attend to attend. Make sure that you make a connection. Introduce yourself to someone. If there is somebody that you want to meet, make sure that you grab that person's business card, and ask him to be a mentor. If that's what you want to do coming out of college, go to a networking event and make sure that you have a plan while you're there.
Networking worked yesterday, it works today, it will continue to work definitely to get that job. Sasha, how has COVID shifted the job market, if it has in any way?
Absolutely. I would say optionality is at its all-time high. There are 16% more companies using remote employment as an option for candidates. So candidates today in Chicago that would have otherwise only had, Chicago opportunities now have expansive opportunities all across the country.
Definitely. And now, going back with you, Pedro, what advice do you have for Latinos watching right now and entering the workplace?
Definitely look into internships, externships. A lot of the times, if you go into an entry-level position, there are companies now. Most are doing tuition reimbursement. I could tell you that right now, companies like to hire within. It's a lot less expensive to promote within than bring somebody outside doing the orientation. And then you also have a feel of the company's strategy, their mission, their vision, and they also have a feel of you, what kind of worker you are.
Once they land the job, what advice do you give them to advancing their career, Sasha? We only have 30 seconds. If you can just give them an advice.
Absolutely. Get in front of the decision makers. The person that hired you, their director, their VP, the president, the CEO of the company, get in front of them, get time on their calendar, and make sure they know who you are.
Definitely. Well, thank you both of you for joining us today. Great advice for the young Latinos graduating from college. Sasha Sayed and Pedro Guerra. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back with more Chicago Tonight Latino Voices right after this. The colors of nature are boundless, but the American conservationist movement has historically been mostly white, and the effects are still being felt to this day. In Chicago, predominantly Latino communities often bear the environmental burden of heavy industry, and residents of those communities say they have a hard time making their concerns heard. Here, the Illinois Nature Conservancy's community outreach team gives La Última Palabra on how they say bringing diverse perspectives to conservation can bring about a natural change.
My name is Lucy Gomez Feliciano. I'm the Community Stewardship Program Manager at the Chicago Park District, shared position with the Nature Conservancy.
My name is Deborah Williams. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for the Indian Boundary Prairies.
And my name is Forrest Cortez. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Nature Conservancy in Illinois. Our goal is to really foster the connection between people and nature.
My role is building a bridge between the people and nature and utilizing my mantra of connecting people to people and people to nature.
I think that the expertise and the lived experiences of our Black and Brown communities has not always been represented in a lot of the mainstream conservation and environmental work that happens. I believe it's almost impossible for us to succeed fighting things like climate change and improving the health of our communities if we don't understand where people's connections already are and the roots that they already have with these places.
My role is to manage approximately 50 volunteers at the Chicago Park District. We're to focus on 27 natural areas across the city. The goal is to engage people in nature and connect them to their neighborhood park, to explore the park, and to feel like they own the park and that the park is theirs and they should advocate and care for it. My family's from Puerto Rico and they migrated to Chicago where I grew up. And as a child, I remember my parents rescuing birds and turtles and bringing all kinds of animals home, and our house was full of plants.
I grew up having my graduation ceremonies and parties at the forest preserves, going to the parks for swimming. So a lot of folks think that in a city, there's nothing to do outside, there's no nature to be found, but many of us have had experiences using green space, and that's reflective of what any Chicagoan might say growing up.
One of the things that's been very valuable to me in this role and with my background is having the opportunity to engage with people who don't have my perspective, and how we have been able to learn from one another and come to a place that is dynamic.
Nature's all around us, whether it's the tree in front of our house, the park or the forest preserve. It is, to me, medicine to our spirit, our souls, our bodies. I think what happens is as we get older, people around us tell us that being curious is something that children do. And I want to give people permission to be curious about anything and everything, and in particular nature, because there is a magical world out here to be discovered.
These spaces belong to all of us, and I want folks to reflect, as I'm often reflecting, on the ways that nature has been a part of their lives that maybe has gone unrecognized by the conservation movement or the environmental movement. Just by being in these spaces, by caring about these spaces, they're supporting a movement that is more than just a few people. It's part of a bigger interconnected ecosystem that we are all lucky to be a part of.
We actually heard from the Nature Conservancy team in a Chicago Tonight Black Voices episode as well. You can find the link to that and more on our La Última Palabra series on our website. In Chicago, we've seen many times how the sudden disappearance of big industry can hollow out formerly vibrant communities and make them difficult places for small businesses to thrive. But Southeast Side native Jorge Chico Perez says there's plenty of dough to be made in his neighborhood. He's been using the bakery his parents closed in 1994 and the recipes his father taught him to do it. Producer Erika Gunderson has a story of a sweet comeback.
One turkey sub. Everything on it? Yeah, one ham, everything on it.
Jorge and Lupe Perez have been serving donuts, pizza, and sandwiches from a walk-up window at 83rd and Houston for just a few months now.
Enjoy, have a good day.
Thank you so much.
But that pan bolillo is more than the foundation of a turkey sandwich. It's the foundation of a comeback story, nearly 3 decades in the making. From 1977 to 1994, Jorge Perez Jr., better known as Chico, learned the ins and outs of running his family's neighborhood grocery store and bakery in this same building.
Learning how to weigh flour and cut eggs and putting up merchandise, tearing up boxes, throwing out garbage. Growing up in this type of environment, it was wonderful because we got to know everybody in the neighborhood.
Perez's mother, Francisca, ran the store. His father, Jorge Sr., split his time between baking Mexican bread and pastries and working swing shifts at U.S. Steel.
My dad was a steelworker, but his trade of being a baker is what he learned in Mexico. And when he came here, and we came here from Mexico, he taught me how to bake. And so it became part of our supplemental income for our family because during the late 70s, there was quite a bit of layoffs. And so
Perez recalls those layoffs took a visible toll on the South Chicago community.
Growing up, we actually saw the changes happening as the steel mill shut down. Families fall apart. You saw folks leave the city or leave this part of the neighborhood entirely. And then you had increase in gang violence, and you get all those sort of social ills, and a lot of it is because the economic base of the neighborhood went away.
Perez bought the building from his father in 1996 and started a family there with his wife, Lupe. As he built a career in economic development, his belief that small businesses are crucial ingredients in the recipe of healthy communities grew stronger. And now, what he sees in South Chicago is opportunity on the rise.
This is the original port of entry for Mexican Americans from 100 years ago. It was the beginning of sort of this new era. We're still growing as a population. And so there still is needs for home ownership or for homes and additional types of amenities. And I think we're at the beginning of that, hopefully for the next 100 years.
In July 2021, the family bakery was reborn as Chico's Oven.
One of the things that I definitely wanted to do as part of the bakery is instill that new era sense of new retail, but also to be able to further this notion of creating a market where there is no market. How do you put that into a community development model? And I want this business to be the beginnings of that. This building and this business was always in a very key strategic location. Metro station a block away and a now high school across the street, Park Field House right next to us. The reason why the industrialists came here, right, is because of the location of this community. And for a good 80, 90 years, that worked out pretty well. And I still believe that because of the location of this community, it still bodes very well.
And Perez says that as a development professional, he's ready to put his dough where his mouth is.
For the past 27 years, I've been telling everybody that I have this goal to reopen my family's business once again. folks pontificate on entrepreneurship, small business. Folks have talked about this. I don't necessarily do that. I want to show them how to do it. And so I'm betting my house on this. I want to show folks that it is possible.
For Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, this is Erica Gunderson.
Chico's Oven is open for walk-up business on Wednesday, Fridays, and weekends. You can find more on our website. And that's going to be our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And if you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Latino Voices and Black Voices on Sundays beginning at 10. Don't forget also to tune into Primera Hora on Univision Chicago every weekday morning. I'll be waiting for you. And next week here on Latino Voices, Michael Puente from WBEC will be here in the host chair. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, I'm Alex Hernandez. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm which is proud to honor founder and senior partner Robert A. Clifford and partner Shannon McNulty for their award for excellence in pro bono and public interest service.